Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. Last time we went to the tomb of Uther Tiberius, had to think for a minute, and got ambushed by a few Inquisitors who then said that they worked for Flavius Draken. And now we get to go find him and ask him, what's up.
How am I supposed to find it?
Yeah, we get to catch a ride in a tank. So I was looking on Bell Lost Souls like I tend to do, and people were talking about bringing back universal set rules, I think it was, which I had to laugh at, because all a USR is, for people who don't know, is... if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, we're really going to target this mine. Okay. Great targeting. But if you ever played Magic the Gathering, you know how you'll have, like, a rule that might be Death Touch or Lifelink or something like that. That's all it is. If you've never seen it or heard of it outside of, I guess, Magic's concept, where it's just a trait that is universal among different groups. And they had gotten rid of that in, I think, 9th edition, like 8th edition they started going away with it, and then they started walking all this back because they realized this just complicates things. Damn, these are some good anti-tank traps if this friggin' Baneblade can't pull Shadow Sword. No, this wouldn't be a is this a Shadow Sword? I think it is, actually. No, I think this... I can't remember. They all have the Baneblade chassis. In the end, it's whatever their weapon that is loaded onto it is. I think it's a Shadow Sword. I want to say it is. Because there's the Shadow Sword Titanicus, which is like a mega giga laser for dumpstering titans. God, I really wish the game would stop auto-locking on landmines. Like, look at this. It's going to make me target these stupid mines that are off my screen instead of the dudes in front of me shooting. So I have to hunt these things down just to get rid of them so the game will stop auto-locking. Because like now this works fine. But the stuff with the USRs, I thought it was funny because then they're just sitting there, this article is complaining like, hey, we need to bring them back. This system that we had of every unit having like their own things that were unique was redundant and just stupid a lot of the time. But then in that same vein, they're like, well, we don't want all of, like, there just be hundreds of USRs and then every unit is just a combination of different ones. I'm thinking, I mean, there's a handful of understandable ones for sure. There's certain things that are race specific, but I mean, like, Feel No Pain, regardless of, like, the name of it, the effect is the same. Stuff like that, it's necessary. You have to have traits like that. Heroescape did it. It simplifies some of the stuff, and then you just can pull up a glossary or any form of appendix in a book and be like, okay, this is this effect, it does this. Instead of being like, oh, okay, this Imperial Guard unit has Feel No Pain. This, Space Marine unit has the Emperor's Finest. This Grey Knight has, the Will of Titan. And they're the same thing. You're just renaming at that point, because some of these abilities, removing them from being USRs, that's all it was renaming existing things or making redundancies. Just being like, oh, it's the same thing, but we just called it a different thing for the sake of being fancy. No, that is an absolute waste of time, effort, and ink to print.
Hope you don't mind me saying, but Flavius Draken is one of the most cold-blooded
Inquisitors
I've ever seen.
Think smart, shop at smart. Don't be an idiot. Just don't reinvent the wheel. And those kind of rule sets where it's like, oh, here's some universal rules that apply across the board. That's fine. That's not a bad thing. I feel like the only people who would complain would be people who want some increased depth, but they themselves don't know how to present such depth. You know, armchair game dev syndrome. Yay, I'm shooting mines instead of the tanks. God, this is so stupid. Now I have to go chase down these stupid landmines, or just push through. That works too, I guess. Also flattened an ogre. Yeah, now I'm fine to attack. Stupid. But yeah, it's stuff like USRs, the fact that they were removed in the first place feels unnecessary.
I've arrived too late. The enemy has already captured the command center.
One thing I thought was funny was the fact that when they were referring to the USRs, they were talking about like, oh, well, they didn't fully go away because some vehicles and stuff have the vehicle tag. And I'm sitting here like, that, I don't even count that as a USR. That is literally just a tag. That is bare minimum stuff. Like, you can't make a strategy game or anything like that without stuff like that. I mean, imagine that. Take Age of Empires. Any which one. Doesn't really matter. 1, 2, 3, 4. But you remember how they'd have, like, pierce armor, hack armor, and, like, bludgeon armor. Imagine if it was just armor. You would have so many problems. Because then, if it's just like, oh, it reduces the damage by X% or X amount, 5 armor is 5 points off. Well, what if you have low damage, high rate of fire archers? You could potentially have them dealing next to no damage, rendering them useless. That's why you'd have pierce armor. It might be lower, or that might be the vulnerability, is like, oh, it's bad against pierce, but it can fight in melee like there's no tomorrow. That's how it is with 40k. You have to have, vehicle-specific things. What would you do with, like, crack grenades or missile launchers? Oh yeah, just shoot it at a guy. It's gonna do the same damage across the board? Or melt-a-bombs or anything like that. That would be so bad. Like, that's bare minimum. You have to have that kind of stuff. I don't count that as a USR. I don't count that as anything except minimum game design. It just... I'm getting annoyed just talking about it because it's such a... Like, they were making a good point, and then they bring that up, and it's such a stupid angle to be pushing with. To be like, see, they didn't go away all the way. It's like, no, you have to. You have to have had that as a minimum. And yes, they should come back. I still kind of laugh at the, tons, like hundreds of USRs, and just combinations. How bad was it, really? Because I don't remember, because I had friends who played back, 2014, no, this was like 2013. Back when, Necrons were just starting to end their eternally reviving Terminator phase. But, I never remember, because I would look at the stuff back then, I never remember seeing, like, tons and tons of rules. And a lot of the times they were pretty universal in stuff that made sense, or it was faction-specific. And faction-specific, if you count faction-specific as a USR, then you've already rendered the word moot, because it's no longer universal, it's just faction-specific. And having traits that are universal or near universal within a faction is fine. That is to be expected. I'm trying to think of one that would make sense, like, just honestly anything, any faction. If something affects orcs, it should affect all orcs. It shouldn't be like, oh, sorry, this ability won't affect Slugga boys, but then I'd say, well, ranged abilities wouldn't be as effective on Slugga boys, but like, if you had a melee-only unit, the only time I would expect abilities not to work would be ranged bonuses, because in theory the melee guys wouldn't have range. But if it's just like, oh, this is a boost to orcs, period, I expect it to affect all orcs. Whether or not you go into, like, grots and all that is another matter. But then you'd have grot specific, or you would say this ability affects orcs and units with the orc or the grot keyword. Plus, you can always get rid of keywords or USRs between editions. Or like in the next edition, that's another commonality in Magic. I remember, was it Kamigawa? Years and years and years ago, they had, now I'm trying to think, was it that, or there was an ice set. It was set in like a tundra. And they had like ice tokens, or like, kind of like how there's Phyrexian mana costs. They had those, but ice. And after that, like, block came out, that whole mechanic, to my knowledge, was dropped. Never came back. Never saw the light of day. That's all you gotta do. You can tweak things all you want, but it's better to just add an ability, say, hey, this doesn't work, lock it back, than to just be like, get rid of, like, all keywords and we'll just figure something out. We'll get rid of the keywords, but we'll write every rule just renamed for each team or each character. Tiresome. I saw stuff, it's been a while now, but some shareholders at, I think, Wizards is owned by Hasbro, but they're I think so. They're trying to spin Wizards off as a separate company, citing that the money made by the game is being squandered and they think it would be better off standing on its own. And I have to laugh at that because I'm like, the only reason that is the way it is because of the recent rise in D&D thanks to stuff like Critical Role. And even then, that rise is very inflated. I remember, gosh, 6-8 months ago, I was talking with a friend of mine, coincidentally the friend who got me into D&D, and we're like, yeah, it seems like a lot of people are playing. He goes, yeah, the problem is, if you look, there's like an app or a program or something for DMs, and you can see like when there's metrics for all this stuff, like session stuff and all that. And he goes, the problem is that a lot of these like sessions start and huge numbers, I think it was over half, don't make it past level 3. And I was just sitting there going, damn, that's incredibly short, because if you're DMing pre-builds, or if you're making stuff on your own, like I would always make it so an encounter or like a series of encounters would bring a party up to the next level. But even then, if you're using like Rime of the Frost Maiden, and their leveling system early on is kind of arbitrary, you gotta complete certain tasks. But even that, it didn't take that long to reach level 3. It was like 3 or 4 sessions. So it shows a lot of people bought in and then dropped off immediately. And while the money is coming in right now, I think it's going to start falling off real fast in the coming year or two. And that's going to have, I'm not going to say like catastrophic effects or anything like that, because I can't say for sure. But it's definitely not going to be as sustainable as they think it is. It also doesn't help, I can't find miniatures in stores anymore. I used to go to a bookstore and get mine there, and they used to, this is old, they used to, way back in the day, carry D&D miniatures at Target, and I could get mine there, and then they stopped carrying them, which is really hilarious considering now you can get the like you can get starter sets for D&D at Target. Granted, it's very bare bones stuff. It's not like a series of the book. Actually, you can get a couple of the books. I did see them. But you can get them there. But they don't have the miniatures. And they don't do as much as they used to. At least that I've seen. I know that you can buy like booster bricks and stuff like that. But it's not the good old days. Or maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places. I very well could be. But it's definitely not as easy to see them anymore. I have to go to like my specialist store. And that's a good drive, and I don't want to go all the way down there just to kind of window shop potentially. It's like a, 45-minute drive, I think. It's not worth it, 9 times out of 10. It's like when I hit the military surplus store. It's a good drive. I have to have something in mind, otherwise I'm not too keen on wasting my time driving all the way there. Grab the chest before I finish this mission. I didn't see anything worthwhile. I should have talked to Freed Caradoc last. Oh well, I forgot which room he was in. Kinda wish you could just do an adventure mode, like in Diablo, but you have to go through to get Uther's Tarot. It makes sense, it just kinda feels a bit sluggish because you have to just sprint through the story. Hey, another level up. And that is all for now. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the like button, it helps out the channel a lot. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.